I knew something was wrong the second I saw Rick at the whiteboard, drawing circles around systems he didn't understand with a grin like he'd just invented fire. Legacy bloat, he called it. My system. 25 years of spit, baling wire, and sleepless nights holding this Frankenstein of a backend together. And this neon-shirted MBA decided he could replace it all with some off-the-shelf cloud suite he heard about at a TED Talk. He'd been at the company 3 weeks. I watched from my desk, same one I'd had since dial-up, pretending to debug a cron job while he walked new hires through our modernization plan, conveniently skipping every acronym he didn't recognize. No mention of the disaster recovery architecture I'd stayed up 3 nights building during the 2013 ransomware scare. No footnote for the database sharding I implemented after our first spike crashed us so hard we made the local news. Just a big fat X through everything I ever touched. Before we go further, do me a favor. If this story's got you hooked already, and if you've ever been written off by someone with more mouth than merit, go ahead and like the video and hit that subscribe button. You'd be shocked how much it helps the team keep digging up stories like this one. All right, back to the gut punch. I didn't always look like someone who could write system architecture in their sleep. I was the quiet one, the old guard, the woman you passed without noticing, the one who never raised her voice but somehow always had the right answer when something caught fire. They used to call me Firewall Fiona behind my back, mostly as a joke, until the day our primary firewall vendor went belly up mid-quarter and I kept the entire East Coast cluster online with nothing but a few scripts and a Red Bull 4 drip. That was back when leadership knew what this place cost, what we cost, to run. That was before the consultants came, before the HR deck said culture alignment and flattened hierarchy, before my weekly ops check-ins were cut to 10 minutes and pushed to Fridays, if they happened at all. Now we had kombucha on tap and a foosball table in the break room, but no one could tell you what a socket timeout actually meant. Rick thought uptime was a suggestion, thought my team was set in their ways. Thought maybe I should start considering early retirement so he could bring in cloud-native folks to build something from scratch. From scratch. He had no clue what lived under the hood. We didn't build this from a clean slate. We layered it over years of mistakes, vendor lock-ins, half-funded upgrades, and midnight patches that kept us breathing through fiscal winters. My scripts weren't pretty, but they worked. They saved this company more than once. And I knew every line. Every server tag, every backdoor panic button, every failover protocol, every messy little heartbeat pulse that kept the whole operation limping along. I never complained. Not once. Even when the board passed me over for VP of Infrastructure in favor of some Stanford wonder boy who lasted 6 months and left us with a broken container mesh and a $400,000 AWS bill. I just picked up the pieces, stayed late, missed birthdays, holidays, hell. I skipped my own 50th so I could manually revert a corrupted schema that would have cost us our contract with the state of Michigan. So when Rick stood in front of my team, my people, half of whom I trained myself, and said, "Some of these systems are ancient. We'll be phasing them out, and if you're not on board with the new direction, well, maybe this place isn't for you." I didn't yell. I didn't throw a chair. I just felt something click. 25 years. That's how long I'd carried this place on my back, quietly, invisibly. And in under 30 seconds, this smug little startup clown had tried to erase it all with a dry erase marker and a joke about legacy thinking. He didn't even look at me when he said it, just kept talking to the new hires like I was already gone. I stood up, unplugged my charger, closed my laptop, no dramatic pause, no speech, just a glance at the team, a long, quiet look. Then I walked out. Not one person said a word. Not that they had to. They knew something had just changed. Rick strutted into his first ops meeting like he was auditioning for a TEDx talk. You could smell the cologne and buzzwords before he even opened his mouth. "We're going agile," he announced, clicking through a deck that looked like it had been designed by ChatGPT on 4 hours of sleep. Lean, scalable, future-focused. No more clinging to the past. He didn't even glance at me. Maybe he thought the only woman in the room was here to take notes. Maybe he just didn't realize what happens when you bulldoze a system you've never bothered to understand. Either way, the second slide came up, sunsetting legacy systems, and my stomach did a slow, molten roll. My name wasn't on those systems, but they were mine. He kept going. "We'll be reducing dependency on internally maintained infrastructure. These handcrafted solutions," he actually air quoted it, "are just not sustainable at scale." My jaw clenched. I'd spent 2 decades making them sustainable when scale damn near broke us. Any questions? He asked. Smug smile locked in place. I raised my hand. Not high, just enough to let him know I wasn't about to get steamrolled. Yes, he squinted. Fran? Fiona, I corrected. No apology from him. I have a question about the systems listed on slide 3, I said calmly. Specifically the billing API and how you plan to replicate the multi-tenant logic without the embedded rules engine I wrote. Oh, come on, Rick laughed, cutting me off mid-sentence. We're not going to keep building around stuff one person duct taped together in 2009. We're moving forward. That means retiring the old dogs. Old dogs. He smiled wider. I'm sure you've done good work, but let's be honest. If this stuff was scalable, we wouldn't be having this conversation, would we? I could feel the room tense. Some of the younger engineers looked down. One of my devs, Nate, opened his mouth like he might say something, but stopped. Rick leaned back in his ergonomic throne like he'd just solved hunger. Look, I get it. Change is hard. But maybe it's time to think about the next chapter. Retire with dignity. Leave the tech to the folks who can build with modern tools. I stared at him. Just stared. 25 years reduced to a punchline in a Canva presentation. Then he dropped the line that did it. The one that burned itself into my spine. If you're unhappy, there's the door. You ever feel a moment split you open from the inside? Like some part of your soul just packed up and started moving out before your body caught up? I didn't react. Not the way he expected. No rage, no raised voice. I just sat still, let the silence stretch around his words like barbed wire. He moved on. Back to the deck, back to pretending like nothing had happened. But something had. I wasn't just insulted, I was erased. And that silence he was so comfortable stepping over, it was the last quiet he'd ever get from me. Rick didn't know that the code he was mocking, the systems he planned to replace, weren't technically theirs. Not legally, not contractually, and definitely not in the eyes of the US Patent and Trademark Office. He thought he was kicking dust off old tools, but what he was doing was kicking a loaded mine. He just hadn't stepped on it yet. It was just after 2 p.m. on a Wednesday when I shut my laptop for the last time. Rick had sauntered out to his strategy sink, leaving the bullpen echoing with half-tapped keyboards and quiet Slack pings. The kind of manufactured calm you get in a storm's eye, right before something breaks. I stood up slow, like my body wasn't quite sure what it was doing yet. 25 years of habit told me to stay, to troubleshoot the DNS hiccup I'd seen flicker in the logs, to push the hotfix I'd started at lunch. But something colder, something cleaner, told me I owed them nothing more. I reached for my mug. The chipped ceramic one that said World's Okayest Engineer with the coffee ring permanently etched into the base. Took one last sip of that lukewarm sludge and set it down on the desk like I was marking a tombstone. Nobody noticed. Nate was elbows deep in a merge conflict. Lisa had headphones in, muttering to herself in JavaScript. The new guy across from me, can't remember his name, something with a J, was building a Docker container like it would save his soul. None of them looked up. And why would they? I'd been invisible for years. The old timer. The relic. The one you went to when the server caught fire but forgot about once the smoke cleared. Hell, most of them probably assumed I was just stepping out to use the bathroom. I grabbed my coat. My real one. Not the branded fleece with the stitched logo and the Founders Circle 2010 badge they handed out like consolation prizes at holiday parties. This was the old black canvas one I wore when I did the 3 a.m. rewires in the snow, the one with the broken zipper and solder stains in the lining. I tucked my laptop under my arm. The company one stayed behind, right where it belonged. Let them have it. On the way to the door, I passed the wall. It was still there, same frame, same dust. The photo of the original team, taken back when we thought this place stood for something more than stock options and agile sprints. 15 of us, shoulder to shoulder in front of the data center. My arm slung over Javier's shoulder, both of us grinning like idiots because we'd just survived a power outage and an investor pitch on the same damn day. I stopped for just a second, looked at their faces. Javier, Priya, old Jack before his heart gave out. People who bled for this place. And now, all replaced, whiteboarded out of existence. Sunset initiatives. That's what Rick had called it. I didn't feel rage, I didn't even feel sadness anymore. Just clarity. I turned, pushed the door open, and stepped into the hallway. No fanfare, no see you later, not even a goodbye Slack message. Let Rick make his announcements. Let the Slack fill with forced shock and half-assed best of lucks. I was already gone. What none of them knew, what Rick especially didn't know, was that walking out wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning. Because I hadn't just spent 25 years building systems for them. I'd spent the last 2 building something for myself. Quietly. On nights and weekends. Logging everything. Documenting everything. Filing everything. And none of it, not a bite, belonged to them. They just didn't know it yet. Rick didn't waste time. By the end of the week, he'd reassigned my entire portfolio to 3 junior devs and a cloud architecture consultant who looked like he wore his Docker certification as a Halloween costume. Slack was buzzing with shallow optimism. We've got this. And time to modernize. All while the API logs flickered with timeouts and broken dependencies like the warning lights on a dying spaceship. But me? I was in my garage, not tinkering, not venting, just filing. I pulled up the folder labeled Zenith Architecture Private from my external drive and double-checked the timestamps. Every commit, every diagram, every prototype server instance. Versioned, archived, watermarked with metadata so detailed it would make a forensic tech cry from joy or shame. I'd spent the last 2 years rebuilding their entire core framework under my own LLC, Bell Systems. Not a clone, not a derivative, a parallel evolution. One I owned. You know how some people knit to relax? I draft patents. And now the final one, the big one, the backbone of their billing engine, routing logic, and session management layer, was ready for confirmation. The form was already filled. I just needed to hit submit. No lawyers involved yet, no press release, just one click, and the United States Patent and Trademark Office would know what Rick didn't. That the system currently powering 62.4% of his operations, down to the caching model and handshake protocol, wasn't theirs. It was mine. You'd think a company that valued innovation would know how IPLAW works. But like most startups bloated on jargon and cold brew, they forgot that not everything built in-house is company property, especially when it was designed outside the scope of employment, maintained on personal time, and never explicitly assigned in a contract, which mine wasn't. Oh, HR tried. Buried it deep in a revised NDA 6 years back, disguised as workflow optimization acknowledgement. I didn't sign it. I printed it out, highlighted the clause, and taped it to my fridge as motivation. I had receipts, old ones, email threads where I declined requests to move development onto company hardware, Jira logs showing personal project as the label, even a Slack message from the old CTO jokingly calling it Fiona's Fortress, a nickname that aged better than he did. Rick, meanwhile, was too busy scheduling team-building happy hours and budgeting for Kubernetes migration that none of them understood. They thought I was a dinosaur, that I'd walked off into the sunset, muttering about COBOL or punch cards. I wasn't extinct, I was evolving, and every move I made now was surgical. No mess, no noise, just pure clinical precision. The kind you learn after watching people like Rick come and go, each thinking they invented fire while dancing on gasoline-soaked floors. I clicked submit. The confirmation email hit my inbox 20 seconds later. Patent filing complete. Status, pending final review. The final box on my checklist was now ticked. Soon, the public listing would show the system's true owner. No company name, no trademark logo, just mine. Matthew Bell, independent inventor. Principal, Bell Systems LLC. I didn't smile, I didn't celebrate. I just closed the laptop, sipped my coffee, and opened the next folder. Because now we were playing my game. It came in at 4:12 a.m., time-stamped like a precision strike. Notice of allowance, United States Patent and Trademark Office. No confetti, no trumpet fanfare, just a PDF and a polite sentence confirming what I already knew deep in my bones. Patent granted. The claim language was tight. Narrow where it needed to be, broad where it counted. Every algorithm, handshake protocol, and decision tree engine I'd written was wrapped in legal Kevlar. I didn't even have to scroll far before I saw it. Bold and bulletproof. Applicant, Matthew Bell Assani, Bell Systems, LLC. Not a damn mention of the company, not in the header, not in the footnotes, and certainly not in the legal ownership fields that actually mattered. I leaned back in my chair. The house was quiet, save for the hum of the old desktop tower. I still ran out of principle. It had been a long time since I felt something close to satisfaction, but there it was. Cold. Clean. Like steel being sharpened. I opened the USPTO portal and updated the public status to reflect the new reality. Owner, Bell Systems, LLC. Primary inventor, Matthew Bell. Operational use license, none granted. Within 24 hours, that information would be public, searchable, indexed, visible to any due diligence team worth half a damn. And wouldn't you know it, that same morning, buried in a cheery LinkedIn post, the startup's CEO announced they were officially kicking off their Series C funding round. Cited to share that we're entering our next phase of growth. Big things coming, he wrote, grinning in a recycled headshot like he hadn't just stepped into quicksand. I knew how this dance went. Series C meant deep dives, technical audits, product architecture reviews, and oh yes, a very fun round of IP due diligence. Investors don't shell out $40 million to fund something they don't fully own. And when that team ran a standard IP search, they'd find me. Not a ghost of me, not a shared credit line, not built in collaboration with just me. The system they bragged about in pitch decks, demoed at tech conferences, and built entire partnerships around, it lived on my servers first. And now it lived on my paperwork. Rick, naturally, had no clue. Last I heard, he was busy designing swag bags for investor meetings, branded notebooks, and reusable water bottles because nothing screams scalability like a bamboo thermos. I wasn't interested in fanfare. I didn't want revenge. Not really. This wasn't rage. This was architecture. Calculated tension, like ratcheting a wrench slowly around a bolt until it either gives or snaps. And it was starting to snap. See, up to this point, everything was still silent. No cease and desist, no letters from lawyers, just quiet, verifiable proof that the engine powering the majority of their operations was legally untethered from their balance sheet. I didn't need to knock. The Series C team would do that for me. And when they did, when the investors finally asked, "Hey, who owns the core infrastructure?" Rick wouldn't have an answer, but I would. I'd already drafted it. 3 words: license available, inquire. They were 40 minutes into the due diligence call when the first crack formed. It started simple, standard investor checklist stuff. A partner from Linscott Capital asked for documentation confirming ownership of all proprietary tech. "We just need clear chain of title for the infrastructure IP," she said, like she was asking for a lunch menu. Routine, necessary. No red flags, yet. Rick, grinning in his best Patagonia vest, said, "Of course, our systems are all internally developed." That's when legal shifted in their chairs. One of the firm's attorneys, Rachel, I think her name was, clicked on mute for a second to whisper to someone off camera. Then came the fateful phrase, "We'll follow up with the patent documentation shortly." Rick didn't catch it. He just kept talking about product velocity, DevOps metrics, some nonsense about quantifying resilience at scale like it was a buzzword scavenger hunt. But in a different window, in a quiet breakout room, the startup's legal intern, poor guy, probably hadn't slept in 3 days, was staring at the USPTO site like it had just kicked him in the chest. He'd typed the search string twice to be sure. Matthew Bell, independent inventor, Bell Systems, LLC. Not a single mention of the company. He checked the chain of ownership filings. Nothing. No assignment, no transfer, no license, no shared ownership clause. The signature line for authorized representative of employer entity was blank, untouched. The system wasn't just unassigned, it was deliberately unclaimed. He slid the laptop over to senior legal. Their reaction wasn't loud. It was worse. Stillness. The kind of silence you only get when something is really wrong and nobody wants to be the one to say it. Then Rachel unmuted her mic and said, a little too calmly, "We're going to need to pause the current review of infrastructure IP until we clarify a discrepancy." That's when Rick's smile faltered. "Clarify what?" he asked, eyes narrowing. There was a pause, a loaded one. "We're seeing a conflicting ownership record on the USPTO database," she said. "It appears the system in question is registered under an independent entity, Bell Systems." "Bell?" Rick echoed. "As in Matthew Bell." "Yes," she confirmed. Someone coughed. Probably one of the interns. Someone else swore under their breath and didn't mute in time. Rick looked off camera. "No, that's not right. I mean, he built a version of it, sure, but it was part of our..." Rachel cut him off. "Respectfully, unless there's a signed IP assignment agreement on file, investor counsel is going to consider this a material risk." Material risk. Those two words hit like a pipe bomb in a server room because they didn't just mean, oops, we'll fix it. They meant liability. They meant delay. They meant someone else owns your product and we might walk. Rick looked like someone had just whispered a death sentence in his ear. He mumbled something about checking old HR files and pivoted to blaming legacy processes for the oversight. But the damage was done. His voice lost that smug edge. His shoulders dropped an inch. He wasn't presenting anymore. He was reacting. Scrambling. The call ended early. To be continued, someone said, which in investor speak might as well mean we're already halfway out the door. Internally, panic spread like wildfire. Slack threads exploded. Legal pinged ops. Ops pinged finance. Someone tried to call the old CTO, who hadn't worked there in 4 years. And through all of it, one question kept coming up like a virus in the code base. Where the hell is Matt? And more importantly, why the hell didn't he sign? I slept like a corpse that night. First time in years, I didn't dream about code rot, memory leaks, or some idiot pushing to prod without a rollback plan. No 3 a.m. pager alerts, no phantom Slack buzzes. Just silence, thick and clean. When I finally rolled over and checked my phone, it froze for a second trying to process the notification count. 243 missed calls. The first 90 were from numbers I didn't recognize. Throwaway lines, burner phones, probably interns sent to do the dirty work. Then came the heavy hitters. The company's general counsel, their outside firm, the CTO's old number, some poor soul still trying that Hail Mary. And then, finally, 12 voicemails from the founder himself, most of them time-stamped between 2 and 5 a.m., each progressively more panicked. I listened to the last one on speaker while brushing my teeth. He wasn't yelling anymore, just breathing hard, stumbling over words like someone chasing a train that already left the station. Matt, please, call me back. We need to talk. It's urgent. The investors are asking questions we can't answer. Look, I didn't know. Nobody told me. Just call me, man. Please. I poured coffee, let it sit, stared at the steam curling up like a signal flare, and didn't touch the phone for another hour. When it finally rang again, I answered. Just once. Didn't bother with a greeting, just let the dead air stretch until he spoke. Why? The founder snarled, voice cracking under the pressure. Does the USPTO list you as the owner? I let the question hang there. No rush, no need to spin it. Then I said, calmly, evenly, without malice, because I am. Click. I ended the call before he could sputter through whatever half-baked threat or apology was loading up next. I'd waited 25 years for someone to ask me who the hell I was in that building. Now they knew. I didn't gloat, didn't post on LinkedIn, didn't leak the call log or slap together some passive-aggressive blog post about lessons in ownership. That's Rick's playbook. Make a mess and try to meme your way through the wreckage. Me? I had all the confirmation I needed, one patent, one LLC. And now, 243 voicemails that might as well have been prayers shouted at a locked server room. The system they built their empire on had a new name stamped on the engine, mine. And for the first time in years, they were listening. The first offer came that same afternoon, forwarded from a Gmail account I hadn't seen since 2015. Matt, let's talk. No subject line, no signature block, just desperation typed from a trembling phone at 4:48 p.m. I let it sit unread for 6 hours, then flagged it unread again. Let him stew in it. You don't get to ghost someone for 5 years and then treat them like a panic button. By nightfall, they tried the old carrot routine. A formal email, this time from legal, CC'd to the founder and some junior VP I didn't know. The kind of message written through gritted teeth and bloodshot eyes. After internal discussions, we would be pleased to welcome you back to the team in a senior leadership capacity. We're open to renegotiating equity, stock options, and long-term incentives. I almost laughed. A week ago, I was legacy clutter. Now I was critical leadership infrastructure. No mention of the patent, no mention of Bell Systems, just a lot of vague offers and glossy phrases like rebuilding trust and collaborative future. They didn't want me back. They wanted what I owned. I didn't reply until morning. One sentence. I don't do employment offers anymore, but licensing is available under Bell Systems LLC. 15 minutes later, the founder called. No screaming this time, just raw, pleading calculation. Matt, we'll pay. Just tell me what you want. Let's not drag this out. I sent the document. 6 pages, clean, brutal. A formal licensing agreement with tiered pricing based on usage volume, enforced exclusivity in their market vertical, and, this part was non-negotiable, mandatory oversight on all future tech architecture decisions by either myself or a Bell Systems appointed consultant. Not a courtesy, not a suggestion, a clause. I wasn't going back in that building to be ignored, outvoted, or erased. If they wanted the system, they were buying the map, and I was the cartographer now. The founder didn't push back. Not much he could do. He signed it 2 days later. Rick was out by Friday. Mutual parting of ways, they called it in the press release. Word around town was that he tried to defend himself. Said something like, "It's just a licensing issue, it's fixable." It wasn't. Not when the system at the heart of your Series C funding belonged to someone who no longer had to answer your Slack messages. Not when the engineer you tried to push out now charged by the hour and controlled your tech roadmap from a cabin in the mountains. I didn't send a message to the team, didn't tweet some half-baked manifesto about justice or vindication. I just filed the contract, backed it up in 3 places, logged the signature ID into my own system under the tag, recovered asset, Zenith Core, and poured myself a drink. That's the thing about revenge. You don't always need fire. Sometimes all you need is paperwork and a pen that only you hold. The boardroom was colder than I remembered. They'd remodeled since I left. Sleeker now, all glass and ego, with matte black chairs that looked like they belonged in a sci-fi courtroom. Nobody made eye contact when I walked in. Not the legal team, not the investors, and definitely not the founder, who sat hunched over his iPad like it might offer him a way out. It didn't. The licensing packet lay on the table, thick and final, 6 sets of initials already inked, only 1 signature left. Investor counsel leaned forward, flipping to the back page. We're agreed on the terms as discussed. Nothing revised from the Bell Systems side? My lawyer shook her head. Nothing. Final terms stand. Silence. A pen clicked. Then the partner from Linscott Capital, same one who'd spotted the missing assignment clause during diligence, signed with a slow, practiced flick. That was the last signature they needed to survive. She slid the folder across the table. At the bottom, in block letters, printed with brutal simplicity, licensor, Matthew Bell, founder and principal, Bell Systems LLC. A younger engineer, maybe late 20s, leaned over to one of the product managers and whispered, "So, who is this guy again?" The founder didn't look up, didn't lift his pen, just stared at the table and muttered under his breath, like it hurt to say it. "He's the reason we're still in business." No ceremony followed. No handshake. The founder didn't even stand when I did. I nodded to legal, slid my copy of the agreement into my briefcase, and walked out. Didn't look back. 10 minutes later, I was on the train heading out of the city, sun pouring through the windows like I hadn't seen it in years. I opened a fresh laptop, new machine, no company stickers, no ghost directories, just a blinking cursor waiting for what came next. Bell Systems wasn't just a shell anymore. It was mine, real, funded, and now it had leverage. Across the street, in a coffee shop with the worst Wi-Fi I'd ever paid $6 to sit under, I launched a new shell session and deployed the first container for something different, something better. Not vengeance, not pettiness, just legacy, built clean, built mine. Back at the office, they were still digesting the clause on page 4, the one that required biannual reviews of their architecture by a Bell Systems engineer. The new engineer they'd hired to replace me. He'd be spending most of his time answering our questions now. And somewhere in their system logs, a new status flag had appeared. System active, licensed use confirmed, no fires, no drama, just permanence. Written in ink, burned into paper, and signed by the last name they ever expected to need again.